The Klon Centaur, probably one of the most talked about, debated over, mythical, misunderstood, you name it, pedals of the last decade, fetching used prices upwards of $10,000. I'm here on Reverb now looking at some of these prices, and I mean, there's one for $33,000, but that person's just trying. They're trying to shoot their shot out there on the internet. I mean, at least a dozen in the $8,000 to $9,000 range. Here I have a clone of a Klon Centaur. It's a by the company, I believe it's pronounced Chariotone Centura, and this is one of the more accurately, I don't want to say depicted, but sort of mimicked versions of the clone variants out there on the market. It even comes with a mock-up of the original hand-drawn, styled instructions that Bill Finnegan made back in the day. And so, speaking of Bill, the creator of the Klon Centaur, he sort of created this as an answer to the Ibanez Tube Screamer, which he used quite frequently, but he wanted to make some adaptations to the circuit that would benefit him and players for years to come, increasing the low end. The Tube Screamer circuit is famous for rolling off quite a bit of low end from your guitar signal, which can be helpful in some situations, other situations not so much. This does mid boost like a Tube Screamer, but it boosts in like a different frequency. This is more of a around 1K boost, whereas the Tube Screamer is a little bit lower in, like, I believe the 700 range. So this does share some similarities with the Tube Screamer circuit, but it does kind of venture off from there, and it has some unique tricks of its own. One big difference is that this is a hard clipping device, whereas this, Ibanez Tube Screamer is soft clipping. Soft clipping usually sounds a little bit smoother, more rounded off, and then it gets a little bit more aggressive and edgy as you head into more and more hard clipped sort of territory. So you have everywhere from a boost to light overdrive headed into something like a Klon Centaur, all the way to a fuzz. Another cool feature of the Klon is that it famously features its dual pot gain knob, so you have a clean signal and a dirty signal coming through, and then this lets you blend it all the way from just the clean to just the dirty and everywhere in between. Josh Scott mentions that the hard clipping diodes inside of this pedal don't really engage until you get to around noon, right around this territory, and then you actually get the mythical part that people kind of rave about for its gain tones. Then the other half of folks just keep it completely down and use the output, and they just keep the song as a boost, which is famously known for as well, being able to be a standalone boost all the way to your gain machine. Not whether or not you need to go out and spend $5,000 to $10,000 to get an original Klon Centaur. I'm not a believer that you have to. I think there's plenty of great companies making versions and clones of this circuit that sound amazing. So who was this pedal for? I think that this is a very useful tool for just about anybody. There's so many ways you can use it. I'll go through some of my favorite and preferred ways to use it, but for today I just wanted to walk through a couple of the ways that I use the Klon Centaur circuit in my rig, and maybe it'll give you some ideas, some new ideas. Alright, let's grab a guitar. It's commonly recommended that you run a fuzz face with an amp that's already kind of on the edge of breakup, just to smoothen it out. It typically works better with Marshall style amps in my experience than a Fender amp. Right now I've got the amp back there at a lower sort of level purposely to sort of demonstrate this effect. If I turn on the fuzz face and just have the amp kind of at this quiet volume where it's not really awake and like doing much yet. Actually, I'll play that for you. This is what the amp sounds like on its own right now. Like I said, it's really quiet, so it's not really doing much life. It's kind of feels a little lifeless. And if I put the fuzz face on top of that, it doesn't sound terrible, just because I find that the fuzz face works a little bit better with Marshall style amps, versus like more like mid-scooped Fender blackface sort of amps. If I turn on the fuzz face right now and play this over a quiet amp, not bad. It's not bad at all. But if I set up the Klon for a clean boost, I did this earlier and kind of realized I needed to keep the output about right there in comparison to how I have the fuzz. If I put this on as a clean boost, it immediately kind of wakes the amp up. So I'll turn this off real quick. Here's the amp again, dry. Turn this on and we get a versus. It's just hitting the front end of the amp just to give it a little bit of hair. And if let me go ahead and preemptively put this here to compensate for the fuzz face volume. If I go back to the fuzz face, sounds great. It's a little rough around the edges. If I turn on the Klon as a boost to hit the front end of the amp before the fuzz face, it smooths out the drive. So I'll do an A/B. Here's once again without. So I once heard somebody refer to it as like, hitting the front end of the amp to get it a little bit of breakup. It's like, giving the amp, the fuzz pedal sort of like hairs to try and cling onto. It's almost like Velcro. It just sticks a little bit better. Okay, so another way that I use the Klon in a live situation is to be able to have sort of like a way to adjust and compensate for when I plug this thing in. I've been using this Acoustasonic Live for some of the rootsier songs in the set recently, but I wanted to be able to just plug this directly into the pedal board and out to the amp, just to simplify things. Obviously, if I use this with a fuzz, it would be mayhem. So when I use this, I turn off the fuzz, and I use the Klon as a way to just kind of EQ and gain match, and also give this a little bit of boost coming through the Marshall. So this is straight into the amp. Sounds okay, but if you give it a little bit of a boost, you get so that's really handy when I just want to make a quick on-the-fly adjustment. Plug this guitar in, move the knobs a little bit, and I've got an EQ set up for this guitar. So the last way that I would use a Klon in my rig is just as a standalone drive. I've done it multiple occasions before, where that was actually my only drive pedal, and it works better in some situations than others. Again, the original intent for this pedal was to kind of replace this, and its primary use was to push the front end of Bill's Fender amps that were already sort of on the edge of breakup. That's where I think this pedal, again, really shines. But for right now, we're just going to pretend like we showed up to the gig and we've got a twin reverb as our backline and we can't get that thing cranked. What would it sound like if we just were getting all of our gain from the Klon? Sounds a little too mid-focused and kind of nasally, but that speaks to a point I wanted to make. Marshall amps are already famously mid-forward amps. So you take another mid-boosted device and you put that in front of the Marshall, and it's just going to be way too much. So I'm going to go back to the Marshall and scoop the mids to try and get closer to where you would be if you showed up and were playing through a twin reverb or a deluxe reverb or something like that. I also boosted the bass just a little bit. All right, here we go. So you can already hear that sounds a lot more balanced, and you can use this as a complete standalone drive pedal, all on its own. So those are my thoughts on the Klon Centaur. They're super useful tools. I think that you can do so much with them. They're just kind of like nice problem-solving tools to have in your arsenal for a myriad of different situations. I don't think you need to drop 10 grand just to get the original. I mean, I've never played one, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think can't go wrong with this. I mean, I hear great things about the Soul Food pedals. I think that people like those. You've got the J Rocket Archer. You've got the Mythos Mjolnir. There's so many good variants out there. So go try one out and see how you can make it work for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you would, take a minute to go check out my original music. I'm going to be touring this year across all of the U.S., possibly Europe. We're overdue for a European run. I've got new music that's going to be coming out in about a month or so. And I also do a monthly live stream here where we're just hanging out, playing songs, talking shop. So I'll put out an announcement about that when I get clarity on the date. Thanks so much, guys. Happy to be here on YouTube, hanging out with you guys. And as always, let's get loud.